After forecast beating first half earnings, what are your expectations for FMG and for the iron ore market in 2019, given this China slowdown and also uncertainties from Vale's accident?
From our perspective, the outlook for the Chinese market actually is still very strong. And then in the context of the tragedy at Vale, I mean, that was a terrible, terrible event. I don't think we yet have clarity in terms of the impact on supply, particularly around the time frame and over and when it might actually start to demonstrate itself in the market. There are views that it'll be in the range of 30 to 70 million tonnes of disruption of supply from Vale. But then I've seen recent reports that talk about the impact on other miners who operate in the same region, and that might extend to 90 million tonnes disruption. So that's quite a significant impact on the market. And I think that's why we're seeing the iron ore price remain at elevated levels. So currently, I think the settings are that we'll start to see that impact sort of manifest itself in the next sort of 3 to 6 months, and then we'll get a better understanding of the extent of the disruption and what it might mean over what time frame.
You mentioned China demand holding up, but auto sales have weakened, and also with uncertainty of China-US trade hanging over people's heads. Is that becoming a bigger variable in the commodity markets?
I think the US trade discussions certainly have an impact on the broader sector and sentiment, but certainly what we've seen actually with steel production is predominantly steel production, or as steel is consumed domestically. So China has not been a big exporter of steel to the US, maybe 1% of steel production. So from our perspective, the impact of these ongoing trade discussions, we don't actually see that having a major impact on steel production. Certainly I think on some of the flat products there has been a bit of a slowdown on those automobile sales, but we tend to focus more on the HRC market, and we're certainly seeing that rebar is still actually very, very strong.
And what about diversifying your markets, so that you're not so overly reliant on China and also not so overly reliant on iron ore?
Well, it's twofold. When it comes to iron ore, we certainly see China as being the dominant market in terms of the import of seaborne iron ore for some time to come. We are in a very strong position in terms of our proximity to what will be a high growth region more broadly, so we are looking at other opportunities. We've seen steel mills being built in Vietnam and Indonesia, and we're actually already supplying to some of those steel mills as well. So over the long term, we see growth coming out of the broader region. When it comes to diversification of commodities, we are interested in diversification. We, like many mining companies, are really focused on that inevitable growth in electric vehicles, which will drive demand for battery materials. So we're looking at that from an exploration perspective, and we've got exploration targets in Ecuador and in Argentina, and those are predominantly focused on copper gold, so that's where we're putting our exploration investment. We're investing $100 million this year in exploration. Most of that will be on our iron ore tenements in the Pilbara. We are the biggest tenement holder in the Pilbara, but we are looking at those opportunities for diversification, both in Australia but also overseas.
Tell us how autonomous technology is now being deployed to lift mining efficiency.
We've actually been embracing autonomy for some time now. So at our Solomon operation, we've been fully autonomous for our haulage systems for a number of years. And we've actually, on the success we've seen there, which is about a 30% productivity improvement, we're rolling that out to the rest of our mining operations. So by the end of this year, we'll be the first iron ore miner globally to be fully autonomous for our haulage. We've seen a fantastic productivity improvement, but we've also seen benefits in terms of safety. We've actually travelled over 24 million kilometres safely with autonomous haulage since we first introduced it at Solomon. So we're seeing both productivity improvements and safety improvements.